Hello and welcome to this webinar hosted jointly by AgriWebb and Gallagher. My name's Mike Hands, AgriWebb Country Manager. Now, as people are joining for the first few minutes, what we're going to start with is a poll. So Amber, if you could launch the poll, please. Okay, fantastic. Thank you, Amber. So for those of you that have joined, and as people are joining, we're just asking a very quick question just to get an idea of the audience that has kindly joined us here today. As it says, we just want to know what best describes your operation: beef, sheep, mixed livestock, dairy, cropping, or mixed farm. So if you can just pop your answer in the poll, and in a few minutes, once we've got hopefully everyone joining the webinar, we'll share the results. And we've already got 115 people submitting their answer to this question, which is fantastic. And thank you very much for doing that. So as people are joining, once again, my name is Mike Hands, AgriWebb Country Manager. Thank you for joining this webinar that is being put on and co-hosted by AgriWebb and Gallagher. And the main theme, or the key theme that we're going to be focusing on today, is boosting productivity with technology. And we're really excited to bring you some demonstrations and descriptions of what it means to be able to utilize the combination of the AgriWebb application and the software plus the Gallagher hardware. So as usual with these virtual events, we're just going to give it a bit of time and allow people to join and get on the Zoom webinar. And we've already got a good number already. We've had a fantastic response rate to this webinar topic. And so we're expecting a good few hundred participants in this webinar. So as you're joining, if you've just joined, you will see a poll question. And we just want to know a bit more about the audience that's attending this webinar. If you can just answer the question, what best describes your operation? And in a couple of minutes, once we've got everyone on the webinar, we'll share the results, and then everyone will see what is the mix of operations of folks that are joining this particular webinar. Okay, once again, I feel like I'm going to sound like the talking time clock, which you probably have to be as old as me to know what that really means, but I'm going to keep a little bit of repetition of the message here as people are joining. So apologies for those that have already joined, but for those that are just joining the webinar now, if you can just answer the poll question so we can get an understanding of your operation and the background, and we'll get started with the content at 5 after, which is just in a couple of minutes from now, and we'll share the poll results once we've got everyone to submit their answers. So today's webinar is boosting productivity with technology, and it's jointly hosted by AgriWebb and Gallagher. Okay, we're looking good. We're up to nearly the double ton in terms of people responding to the poll, which is fantastic to see. So as you're joining, if you haven't already, can you please answer the question, what best describes your operation, so we can get an understanding of the audience that's attending so far. And I'm pretty excited to share the results because they look quite interesting in terms of the mix of operations and people that are attending this webinar. My name's Mike Hands, AgriWebb Country Manager, and I'm going to be joined by some great folks from AgriWebb and Gallagher to bring this webinar, Boosting Productivity with Technology, to you today. Now, for those that have joined so far, I will also tell you that this webinar is being recorded, so you will get this in an email post this session, and you'll be able to access this recording and get to those key points of interest that you might want to rewatch during the session. During the session, we will be demonstrating some product as well, so and showing how AgriWebb integrates with Gallagher, which really aligns to the theme of boosting productivity with technology. All right, we'll just give it one more minute till we get to 5 after, and we've cracked the double ton in terms of poll submissions, which is fantastic. So if you've just joined in the last minute or so, you will see there's a poll question that we're asking the audience, what best describes your operation? If you can pop your answer in, and in about a minute's time, I'll share the results of the audience that we've got on this particular webinar, and then we'll get started with the webinar proper and the content that we're going to be presenting today. All right, well, we've reached the 5-minute mark, which I think is the requisite time, as we've all become pretty familiar with virtual events due to unfortunate global circumstances, but particularly affecting our eastern states at the moment here in Australia. 5 minutes is pretty much the standard time we allow for people to join. So let's get going. And Amber, if you can share the poll results, please. All right, fantastic. So we should see those poll results now. And what we can see is beef producers are making up nearly 50% of our audience today at 49%. And then sheep at 12%, mixed livestock 19%, mixed farm 19%. And just a couple of dairy farmers. Welcome to the dairy farmers, and one cropping. So good mix there, pretty heavily skewed towards our beef producers, but all welcome here today. Now, I'll just kick off with a welcome to country. And so what I'd like to start by saying is, I would like to begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet today and pay our respects to their elders past, present, and future. So our agenda today and introduction to the panelists. My name's Mike Hands, AgriWeb Country Manager, and I'll be giving the welcome and introduction. So a couple of minutes really up front, and then I'm going to hand over to a couple of our AgriWeb colleagues who will be giving an introduction to AgriWeb and a demonstration. And the first of those is Josh Collins. Josh is a veteran of AgriWeb. He's been at AgriWeb almost from the very beginning. So as you can see, he's about 90 years old. He's been here for a long time, and is also a second generation farmer in his own right. Joining Josh will be Ed McGeek, who is a third generation farmer and is employed by AgriWeb as a AgriWeb consultant, but before that was actually a customer first. So he is, his family started as AgriWeb customers, and now he works for AgriWeb. So we'll be hearing from Ed in a couple of guises, one demonstrating the product, and then a bit later with a Q&A with me. And then thirdly, we've got Mike Hemsley, and Mike is going to be summarizing and talking about the Gallagher indicators and how they integrate with the AgriWeb software. And then our final session is Q&A. And so that's where you can ask questions of the panelists. And in fact, you can do that throughout the session. So use the little Q&A button at the bottom of your Zoom webinar, and you can pose questions in there, and we'll curate those questions throughout the webinar and pose them to the panelists at the end. You can also pose questions throughout the session, which we may answer during the session, and then we may answer some at the end. If you just have general chat, then post in the chat. Feel free to do that as well. Okay, let's move on with the content. So this is Wirialpa, which is a family farm for John Fargo, one of the AgriWeb founders. And John's a sixth generation farmer from the Flinders Ranges. And I show this because this was really the origins of AgriWeb. John was on the family farm and finding that all of the data was being recorded, not in a digital device, but in those little top pocket notebooks, or it was being kept in his father's head. And so the challenge he faced was, how do we actually understand and get insights and know how to make better decisions on our farm? And so that was really the origination for AgriWeb. Now, fast forward 6 years, and this is what we've now reached. So we now have an end-to-end farm management application with AgriWeb. And we've managed to build all the functionality that you see on this screen today. But it's not necessarily the functionality that's the most exciting, because what's now accessible with the integration to Gallagher Hardware are the insights. And these insights can show you what are the best performing livestock by breed, by sire, by vendor, what are your most productive paddocks. And what you're able to now achieve is increased productivity, which is really the theme of today's webinar, how you can use a combination of technology to boost your productivity. So before I go into the next slide, I've got another poll that we'd like to ask you. Amber, if you could launch that poll, please. Okay, brilliant. So as you're reading that, I'll give you a little bit of background. So what I'm keen to know is if you're able to track and measure animals at an individual level, on an individual basis, and then have insights, what do you think would be the potential productivity boost that you might get in that scenario if you had access to that by the combination of technology? And so you could say, feel free to answer obviously any of these. You could say, well, actually, I don't think I'm going to get any productivity improvement. I hope that's not the case, but you could say that. Or it might be a small amount, 1 to 2%, 2 to 5%, 5 to 10%, or even more than 10%. So I'll just let that go for another 30 seconds or so before we share the results. I think I really wanted to put this poll in to really understand from the audience, what do they believe? What do you believe could be the potential performance improvements that you get if you had the ability to track, measure, and then have insights into those individual animals? Okay, once again, we've cracked the double ton in terms of poll respondents, which is fantastic. Thank you very much for that. Amber, if you could share the results, please. Okay, and we can see that absolutely zero, a bagel, to use an American phrase, said 0, which is great. That's probably not that surprising if you think about it. If you're on this webinar, you probably genuinely believe that there's an opportunity to increase productivity. So a small amount said 1 to 2%, but the majority at 43% said more than 10% productivity improvement by measuring animal performance individually, which is great to see. Okay, now what I have got here is we surveyed our AgriWebb customers and we asked them, what is the kind of performance improvement that you've seen so far? And I will caveat this to say, this was using our mob-based application. So this was before we had many customers using the individual animal management and tracking it down to that individual level. But this is what they told us. And so what I've got here is an example mixed livestock operation of 500 head of cattle and 3,000 ewes. And the average performance improvement that our customers said when we served them was 1.7 to 2% in terms of either weight gain or breeding improvement. And so how that quantifies out for this kind of size of operation at current prices is about $62,000. So pretty good actual revenue and additional income benefit by using AgriWebb. Now, we also, and I put this in, this was the median result. So what we found was the average was a bit lower, but most people said in the 5 to 6% range. And so for a 500 head of cattle and 3,000 ewe operation, that amounts to around $185,000. Now, interestingly, the majority of you, 43%, said more than 10%. So you can take that number and double it in terms of the potential improvement for this size of operation. So there's no doubt, I think we all agree, there's substantial benefit in terms of what you can produce and the resulting revenue that you can take from an improved productivity. So that's great. I'm sure you all understand that, but the question is, how do you do it? And so to answer that question, I am going to now hand over to Josh and Ed, who are going to demonstrate AgriWebb.
Thanks, Mike, and I really appreciate the introduction. It's so exciting to have an amazing group here on the call with us today. I want to start with the Agriweb Mobile App, which is really the heartbeat of the operation. And for those of you that are already using AgriWebb, you'll be really familiar with the look and feel of the mobile app and the map that we're looking at here. For those that are new to AgriWebb, our mobile app, it works offline and online, no matter where you are in the world or in the country, and it works on any Android or Apple device. We're demoing to you on an iPad today, and what I want to really focus on here is what's going on here on this map. And there's multiple colors, icons, but ultimately what this map is based around is your farm map. And each of those colors, we can customize those paddock colors, which for us, those colors represent a grazing rotation. And the pins, the animal pins there, you can see are livestock in those particular paddocks. And as you kind of zoom in a little bit further, we can see that each pin has a couple of colors across the top. Those colors indicate the tag colors of the animals in that mob. The species is obviously indicated by the sheep or the cow in that livestock pin, and the number at the bottom is indicating the amount of livestock in those paddocks. So everything from moving livestock between paddocks to really understanding and visualizing the operation from that 1,000-foot view is done directly from this farm map. And Ed, how are you guys using this on your operation?
Yeah, thanks, Josh. I guess obviously the map here is so powerful in its own right, just to show you where your stock numbers and things are. But beyond this, you can also dive into this farm map and adjust what you're wanting to view. One of the most powerful things I think in our situation is adjusting your default map to one of the insights here that we have, which is our days since grazed. So this provides just another simplistic look at the days since your paddocks have been grazed by stock. So this is extremely powerful for, grazing rotations and things like that. So you can dive in and see, for example, there, South Woolshed hasn't been grazed for 16 days. And you can see over here, Farm West hasn't been grazed for over 100 days. So it just gives you a nice idea of forward planning, which paddocks are potentially coming back around in that rotation cycle.
Yeah, super powerful and really simple as well from that mobile app. You've got this in your pocket, right? Wherever you go, every paddock and every animal on the farm in your pocket. As we kind of take a deeper look down into the animal card and the paddock, it's just opened up a moors, the paddock here. We can see hectares, and more importantly, as we head over to animals, seeing every animal in that paddock at an individual level, which gives us the capability to dive in and understand everything about that individual animal, whether it be from weights to history to condition score. And as we can see, the Merino 303 here, we've got the EID tag, we've got date of birth, are really beautifully designed and easy to understand on a mobile phone, whether you're in the yards, in the front of the tractor, or you're just cruising around the property trying to understand any particular animal or paddock. And so down as we go down to the weight over time, this is a really powerful one, which every animal has. Obviously the weight over time graph, which is giving us the capability to not only understand its life cycle, but it'll actually start to predict as well what it thinks its weight is over time with ADG. So that's a really powerful tool, particularly for I think a lot of the beef operators that are on the call here with us today. As we head back to the farm map, I think I really want to just kind of explain that it's not just about livestock on the farm map, and there's some really powerful tools here when it comes to managing paddocks. I notice there's a few croppers on the call as well, or some of you that are mixed operators. Paddock management, whether you're looking at feed on offer or understanding a stocking rate, or simply might be sowing a crop or doing harvest, all that capability is available from AgriWebb from each individual paddock. And Ed, do you want to tell us about how you guys are using this on your place as well?
Yeah, definitely. So again, with the farm map, it's extremely powerful to see, what type of cropping variety you've got in with simply your colors of your map. So it gives you a clear indication. Then when you dive in further here as well, understanding your productivity indicators around, feed on offer, putting in a growth rate if you're aware of that. And even more importantly, just the history again, which is such a powerful tool to go in and see, all of your pasture growth rates, your feed on offer values, also any treatment records that have been applied. You can see this paddock in the top left corner with the red highlight. This paddock's currently in withholding. It's recently been sprayed, gives you a clear indication on the map. And again, diving into history, I can see my treatment here, treatment date, what was used, etc. So yeah, just for complete transparency around what's going on in your paddock management, it's certainly very powerful.
Yeah, and it really unlocks the real power of the app in that sense, with those really bright colors. You can easily understand anyone on the team, whether they're new to the business or whether they're you've been with the business for many years. It's really understand to contextualize those kind of things like withholding periods. Just finally on the farm map, I want to touch on tasks, and whether you're a team of 1 or of 100, task management becomes really important for planning into the future or just contextualizing all the things that have got to be done. And sometimes it can make a big difference adding that to a specific location. So here we can see there's 3 tasks on the farm. Each of these tasks have got a priority. They're assigned to Ed. I created this task and assigned it to Ed, which it's now overdue. and I've got a little bit of detail down the bottom as to what I want done on that particular task where there's a tree down on line brush. But this becomes a really powerful team management tool, and it gives great transparency across the operation to assign tasks to one another, complete work, and drive this forward as a real team collaboration tool. So I want to move away from the farm map now and move across to livestock. And for a lot of you on the call today, thinking about individual animal management, this is one of the main tools to applying those records to individual animals. So whether you just want to unsee every individual on the farm, or you want to view past records or sessions that you might have applied records to animals in the yards or by the chute, this is that powerful place to come and contextualize and understand that history. In this case, what I want to do is a live session. So imagine we're in the yards and we're going to apply either a group of records to any given animal, sheep or cattle, and maybe we want to create or save a template. So if you're doing regular records where they might be weighing or weighing in a treatment, you can save those and come back to them kind of as a bit of a quick link. You can also see quite a number of the other records that we're adding to these records all the time. And at the moment, there's a really in-depth group of records there for cattle and sheep producers alike. So what I want to do is talk you through a live session. And because we're not by the yards, I want to show you a video that Ed and I created for this session. And before I do that, I just want to explain the connection between hardware like Gallagher and AgriWebb and how that connects via Bluetooth. So in any AgriWebb individual animal management app, you've got the capability to connect hardware like Gallagher to your AgriWebb Bluetooth, which gives us the ability to then run ultimately the live session that we've just discussed. And so when we're doing that live session, what it gives us the ability to do is obviously scan an EID tag on any animal and then apply those records to it real time from the yards. So what we might do is just go ahead and play the video here that Ed and I prepared for you earlier, which explains that exact process.
All right, let's go.
We might be short on a little bit of sound there, but I can animate for us. So what Ed's doing here is actually, as you can see, he's scanning the animal, the ear tag, and it's popped up with the weight there of 433 kilograms. Why that's really important is we're obviously able to contextualize every animal in real time in the yards, and you can see he's just scanned in B59 there. We can see her weight and understand more about that animal in that flow, and with a little summary at the end, which tells us a little bit about the total overall animals in that live session, whether we're lining up a mob of hundreds or thousands in one go. We can really simply contextualize that via the mobile app and see any individual animal. While we're here, we can also apply ad hoc records as well. So if you notice that there might be a pink eye or something that you want to address individually to that animal outside of a template or a session, you can really power that forward and create individual records within a session itself. So what I'd like to do is introduce Mike Hensley, who's on the call here with us as well. So Mike is from the team at Gallagher. Has a plethora of knowledge with 14 years of history at Gallagher, and has built a lot of the great technology that we are obviously integrating with over at the Gallagher team. So I want to just pass to Mike to talk about how that process and integration works with Gallagher and what's available over at the Gallagher team.
Thanks, Josh. Thanks everyone for joining today. Mike's got a bit of a presentation he's going to show for me here. That example there you saw was Ed set up. He's using an HR5 reader to scan the EID tag into his TW3, and as soon as the weight locks on, both the EID and the weight are sent to the AgriWeb app on his phone. So pretty simple setup. The TW connects to the mobile via Wi-Fi. The handheld reader connects to the TW1 via Bluetooth, or in Ed's case, a TW3. A livestock session is started in the AgriWeb app, the EID tag scanned and sent to the TW3, and then a weight's captured, and both the EID tag and the weight are sent to the app. So I'm just going to spend a few minutes going through a range of indicators and readers, and in particular, some of the combinations that connect in real time to the AgriWeb app. Gallagher have a range of indicators and data collectors, starting from the basic weight readout of the W0, which you'll see on the left there, through to the sophisticated data collection capabilities of the TSI. The W0 is designed to capture weight only, but this weight, once locked, can be sent to another device, such as a mobile phone or tablet, Apple or Android, running AgriWeb. The next one pictured, the TW1, can link up to a Bluetooth reader and allows an EID to be read and captured along with the weight and some notes if desired. This is usually stored for later upload to our software. However, it can send data to another device running AgriWeb. It can send the weight only, or more commonly, we use a data logger mode where both the EID number and the weight together go to the AgriWeb app. Next to that, we have the TWR1. That's like the TW1, except this has an onboard reader. So you don't need to connect a reader up via Bluetooth. You can just plug in an antenna panel. Again, the data is stored for later upload, or it will send the EID and weight to another device running AgriWeb. The next two models, the TW3 and the TWR5, you saw there Ed using the TW3, and the TWR5 is the top range of the TWs where it has an onboard reader. They allow for more data to be captured. So normally you could put that into our software, but because of the ability to send it, the weight and the EID via the data logger mode, it will go to the AgriWeb app. And lastly, we have the TSI. Now, the TSI is an older type model, but with the use of a Bluetooth dongle, you are able to send the EID and weight out to AgriWeb using an Android tablet or phone. So we do have a few customers who are already doing that. Now, on this slide, I've narrowed down to 3 models. If you were, of the 6 models shown in the previous slide, probably the 3 that you would choose to buy to specifically work with AgriWeb are the W0, the TW1 and the TWR1. This is because the data collection you will be doing is on the AgriWeb app and not on the indicator. The indicator is just used for capturing the weight and the EID and sending that information to the app. The W0 and the TW1 will both need to be used in conjunction with an external reader to get the EID tag. With the W0, AgriWeb will read the weight and capture the EID separately with an EID reader. With the TW1, the EID can be captured by the TW1 first and the EID and weight sent together to the app. And with the TWR1, because of the onboard reader again, we can plug in an external antenna and it will send both the EID and weight to the AgriWeb app at the same time. More on some of those different scenarios in a moment. Just a word on readers here. So here are the readers we have available to send EIDs to our scales and or AgriWeb. The HR4 and HR5, you'll see there are the handheld readers, can connect to our weight indicators and capture an EID. Once a weight is captured, both EID and weight are sent to AgriWeb. Both readers can also send EID tags directly to AgriWeb without connecting to the scale first. So that's useful for scanning animals when not weighing. We can also use the BR reader controller attached to an antenna to send an EID to an indicator before sending the EID and weight to AgriWeb. The AgriWeb app, though, will not pick up the EID from the BR reader directly, so we need to use an indicator to do that. The antenna with the long cable pictured here will just plug directly into the TWR1 or TWR5, as those indicators, as I mentioned before, have the onboard reader. So just looking at a few typical setups. The first one here is a W0 and a handheld reader. The W0 connects to the mobile via Bluetooth Low Energy. The handheld reader connects to the mobile via Wi-Fi. And then a livestock session is started in the AgriWeb app. An EID tag is scanned and sent to the app, a weight's captured and sent to the app. So there you are collecting your weight and your EID, and as Josh mentioned, putting in other information into the AgriWeb app. On the next slide is a TW1. Now this is where the EID is scanned into the TW1 the TW1 locks onto a weight, and the livestock session that's been started in the AgriWeb app will pick up both the EID tag and the weight once that weight is locked on. The example here is a TWR1. TWR1 connects to the mobile via Wi-Fi. The antenna is plugged into the TWR1. The livestock session is started in the AgriWeb app. EID tag is scanned and sent to the TWR1. The weight's captured and both the EID tag and weight is sent to the app. Very, very simple way of doing things. And in summary, there are a number of ways that the range of Gallagher indicators and readers can connect to AgriWeb in real time. This allows you to easily capture EIDs and weights into the AgriWeb app at the yards using your phone or tablet.
Thanks, Mike. Really great overview there of how AgriWeb works with all of the great Gallagher kit. And what we might do along the way here is if the team in the background there and just pop in a link to all the great Gallagher kit that we integrate with. And if you're wondering, can you connect to AgriWeb, just click on that link and check out what readers you've got there. And I noticed there's a few questions about readers, which we'll come back to in a moment and certainly address those. So at the end of your live session that we just showed you in that video, and as Mike has really showed those setups and how we can use those hardware tools, EID readers and weightheads to really connect and power AgriWeb to pull in the EID and apply things like a weight or other treatments or other records to the animal. And that's when all that information, once it's done, is synced to the cloud and to the AgriWeb web app, which is what we're looking at here now. And so the AgriWeb web app has all the same great functionality that we just showed you on the mobile app, but there's a couple of tools here like Livestock Insights, which become really powerful for performance and really driving decisions on livestock performance. And so what we're looking at here is all the livestock on this particular property. So we can see this 672 animals and the projected live weight for those animals, the live weight over time, daily live gain, all of that really critical production information lives here in these insights. And we can drill into any one of these reports. There's hundreds of ways that we can filter on this and really visualize at scale all of our different parameters around livestock. And the way I'm viewing this at the moment is by tag color. And you can see there's three very distinct age classes here between the purple, green, and orange. And so what that's showing us is each one of those strings, which if you highlight one of those strings, is an animal. And we can see there's 3 weigh sessions in that animal's time on this particular property. Where this becomes important is obviously understanding your performing animals and the traits that's driving those to be performing animals and the underperformers. And so as an example of just picking out underperformers, we can just highlight any of these animals really easily and then drill into those. So we can see Ed's highlighted the animals under 300 kilograms, which then gives us the ability to dive in and understand, what is it, a particular vendor? Is it the particular bull that we're using? What is it about those underperforming animals that we need to make decisions from? And so this becomes really powerful at a production level. When we came into this session, most people believe that 10% of improvement or a 10% plus improvement could be made by tracking individual animals. This is where we make those decisions. This is where we discover those savings. And by having these reports at an insights level, we can finally start to integrate that into our livestock systems and drive performance-driven decisions. So, Ed, I pass you, and how are you utilising this on your farm at home, and what are the production decisions that you're making on these insights?
Yeah, thank you, Josh. I guess in these insight reports, primarily as a cattle trading operation, is pretty much our weight gains. That's the most crucial thing that we can have on farm, especially our average daily gains in conjunction with that, just so that we can then see, what our I guess, our brackets for our current stock on farmer, how they're performing throughout different times of the year, and then just going in and looking at that information easily and easily accessible in these reports to then just make your data-driven decisions around, time for sale and things like that are coming up.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will also, I guess, stress the point as well that we've just looked at one way to view these animals. There are quite literally hundreds of ways to view performance, whether it be by vendor, by bull, by any parameter around animal, date of birth, history, treatments, anything that we want to uncover and determine. We can really ask those questions, drill in and find the data to answer them, and then push those animals back out into another live session. So when they come back through the yards, we know that we can pull those animals out and choose to manage them differently, or cull or feed or treat in another way that's going to drive up that performance. So that's really, I guess, the 1,000-foot view of how AgriWebb is helping farmers around Australia to make performance-driven decisions with individual animal management. We've covered, I guess, a small area of the product today, and no doubt for those of you that are keen to understand more in that demo, we're going to cover off a few questions now. So back to you, Mike, and let's go to some question time or interview with Ed.
All right, fantastic. Thank you for that, Josh, Ed, and also Mike. So this next piece, I'm going to ask Ed a few questions in his role as a farmer on his family farm, and then we'll get into more general Q&A where we'll answer some of the questions that have been posed in the chat, or indeed questions that you come up with now. So what I would ask you to do is just imagine I'm Macca and it's a Sunday morning and it's Australia all over. So we already know what your name is via the registration, but if you can just give us where you're from, that'd be great, so that we can put a little bit more behind who you are and your background when we're answering your questions. Okay, so Ed, just sit back and relax, and I'll ask you a couple of questions. So the first one is, going back to the time before you had the combination of AgriWebb and Gallagher on your family farm, what were some of the challenges and obstacles you were facing?
Yes, perfect. Thank you. I guess initially, years ago, before we'd looked at any options around, weighing down in the yards with the Gallagher system or AgriWebb, was primarily just around clarity of what was going on the farm at that time. As a trading operation, obviously, the model was you buy in lighter weight steers, grow them out to a certain weight and then sell them off. Without having Gallagher, we honestly had no real indication of what those weight ranges were across the board. And then you get to a point where if we had a mob that we thought were at that point to sell, we'd get an agent to come in and weigh those. So that was really that first, I guess, insight we had into, how they were performing, what was their weight. So there was, I guess, a bit of, guesswork involved with, which mobs are the next ones to kind of go. And then, what's the, I guess, relative weight of certain mobs. And that was, I guess, the main challenges around our weight, and then also the challenges around just the storing of our data, especially, paddock rotations, how long had stock been in previous paddocks for, when was the last time they'd been in certain paddocks, and also just some of those productivity indicators as well, knowing what your specific stocking rates are across the board as well, down to that, DSE level and things like that was, I guess, you had all that information, but it was quite difficult to extract and then to calculate across the board. So they were really the main challenges that we found, before looking at alternative solutions.
Okay, brilliant. Thanks, Ed. Now, Annabelle, I see you've raised your hand a few times now. So I think you must have a burning question. If you can just go to the Q&A button, or if you do have a question, go to the Q&A button, pose your question in there, and Dave, one of our team, will either answer it directly or we'll answer that in the next section. If you can do that, please, that would be fabulous. Okay, second question for you, Ed, is, okay, so that was some of the challenges. And then what was the reason for yourself and your parents deciding on, well, I think AgriWebb and Gallagher is the right combination to help us overcome these challenges?
Yeah, definitely. So I guess the first challenge and the most pressing was that, lack of weight data. So I guess the main reason we went out and looked at Gallagher was just so that we could have complete clarity around, what was the weight of all of our stock on farm, but also the next level was what was their productivity. So the average daily gain piece was really, really important for us. So not only having those weights, but then also being able to look at, through spring or through winter when, you know, your feed's obviously not maybe performing as well as it was, what are those average daily gains that are then correlating across? And it just gave us a lot of power in knowing, you know, how our stock was doing, but also at what point in its journey, I guess, on our farm that animal was at. And then that tied in really well with AgriWebb, was then just having that, I guess, consolidated source of where all of our data would reside. Away from, I guess, the weight side of things, just our audit compliance, you know, having all of our treatment records in the one place, having all of our sowing records in the same place, all of our treatments for paddocks in the same place, and just being able to easily access all that. And then on top of that as well, having all of your purchase information input in there as well. And just pretty much, I guess, all the records that were relevant for us, if you wanted to dive in and look at any, I guess, productivity indicators, just having that in that one source that was easy to, I guess, view, and also easy to understand was another thing as well, not sifting through spreadsheets and trying to come up with our own ways to try and view that data.
Okay, fantastic. So that gives us the challenges and the obstacles, and then, you know, why AgriWebb and Gallagher. And now you've been using that, and your parents and yourself have been using that combination for a period of time. Have you seen some benefits, and what are the kinds of benefits you've seen?
Yeah, definitely. So I guess working alongside of them, really just having that weight clarity is really important for us, because the way that we operate is grouping our stock in their weight categories. So obviously when they come on, we've got, you know, under 350 kilos, then you've got that 300 to 400 kilo range. And then anything above that, which is our go-to-market stock effectively. So having the weight gains, the average daily gains, and then the projected weight gains that we can generate out of AgriWebb as well, it just gives us a lot more of an opportunity to then forward market our stock. So if we know that, you know, we've got a certain number of animals via that insights page, they're at a certain weight, and our daily gains are performing quite well, then we know that we can market those off. So in terms of, I guess, a commercial aspect of the farm, we can be really more commercially active in pushing our stock off earlier, so that they're on farm for a limited amount of time, and then you can go back in again with that next purchase. I think that was one of the really crucial ones. And then also just from our productivity side of things as well, just understanding with certain, you know, new, I guess, grazing varieties or pastures that we're putting in, how that then correlates to the production of our stock as well. So we can know, you know, what we've sown in that paddock, what were the daily gains we expected and saw across that paddock, and how did that correlate to you know, going forward, boosting our productivity, because obviously the bottom line is, you know, how many animals can we get on farm at one point in time. So that was really, really crucial in visualizing that. I think was quite important. And then the final one was just our last audit, was honestly a 20-minute process with your JBS audits, just providing all of your treatment records. You literally just say, yeah, we're with AgriWebb, here's our treatment report that we can print off, and, you know, it saves the teething issues of searching back through your spreadsheets and all of your documents that you had to try and record and put all that in one easy viewing platform.
All right, brilliant. Well, thanks for that, Ed. That was fantastic. You answered all my three challenging questions really well. And so now it's over to you, the audience, on our webinar today. And we've got another 18 minutes remaining. So I welcome back Josh Collins and Mike Hemsley. And now's your chance to put these three gentlemen in the hot seat and ask your hard questions. Now, as I said, imagine I'm Macca, which is probably pretty hard to do, and you're calling into Australia or whatever. Give us a little bit of background about where you're from, and we'll try and incorporate that into the Q&A process. So I've got a few questions that have come through already. So I'm going to start by, this question comes from Nicolette, and I think, Ed, you're going to be the man that answers this one. So the question is feed on offer calculated, or is it based on manual entry assessment from the user?
Yeah, so I guess for the vast majority, it's a manual entry, but you can bulk update that across the board. So on the web app, you've got the opportunity, say you go out and you assess, you know, a number of paddocks, and you've got the relative ideas of what their kilograms of dry matter per hectare are. You can come back in and then bulk update that on the web app. And it's really powerful as well. Not only once you put those in there, it actually takes into consideration your stocking rate as well. And then it will automatically reduce your available feed on offer effectively by that stocking rate that you're seeing in that paddock. And on top of that, again, if you do know any of your pasture growth rates, that will also correlate to calculating what your available feed on offer is in that paddock. But I guess alongside that as well, there are certain integrations that AgriWebb is looking at and currently has, and one is with SIBO Labs, which does allow for automated feed on offer updates on your map if you've got a subscription with those guys as well.
Fantastic. Thank you, Ed. Okay, we've got lots of questions coming in, which is brilliant. I'll go to one that came up during the session for Mike Hemsley. from Ingrid, what if Wi-Fi service is limited or not available?
Yes, Ingrid. So the Wi-Fi that we use is basically a direct connection to the scales. So we don't need a Wi-Fi to the internet. It's a direct connection. It's just a vehicle we use, much like Bluetooth, to get data from one place to the other. So on a TWR5, for instance, you would just set it on your Wi-Fi to do a direct connection, go onto your phone and then connect to your TWR5. And that way the two are talking. So no, you don't need any internet at all or any Wi-Fi connection. It's just between those two pieces of gear.
Okay, great. And thanks, Mike. There is a nice extension question to that, which, oh, there's lots of questions and now it's gone off my screen, but I'll try and remember it. It's from Jake in Central Queensland. And I think this is a good one for you, Josh. Central Queensland, not a lot of great internet when they're in the yards. So is it okay to do the live session and then upload later?
Yeah, absolutely, Jake. The Agriweb app works completely offline if you don't have any reception in the yards or you're out in a remote location. That said, if you prefer not to use the mobile app and you just want to save that information on your hardware, download that CSV and you can upload those directly to Agriweb at any point in time when you're back at the homestead or you've got access to Wi-Fi at a later date. So there's some really nice ways to combat no reception. It's something that hundreds of our customers are using on a weekly basis, that offline capacity with individual management.
Great, thank you for that, Josh. And I'm sure that answered your question, Jake. This one's also for Ed, and it's from Tim. It's a bit of an extension on the Q&A that we had, Ed. But this one's pretty specific. What were one of the immediate benefits you saw in the yards after doing a live session?
Yeah, I guess one of the immediate benefits, what we'd normally do is you'd pull that, you've got your live session data down in the device. But we'd be writing our weights out as well alongside that, and we'd come back in and we'd plug that into an Excel document just so that we've got all of our weights there as well. I guess an immediate benefit was instead of doing that, once we put them in there, we then automatically got them back in the computer and we can go in and analyze that. I guess another tangible benefit was the drafting option that we've got down in the yards as well. So obviously with our weight categories, we're drafting 3 ways in the yards. And by manually inputting that in during the live session as well, when we actually go back onto our map, it's automatically split up that mob into those 3 weight categories down to that EID level. And then we literally just drag and drop those mobs back out in the paddock. So I think, before that, you'd have the 70, but you're trying to go back in and figure out, which specific ones went each way. And it's just pretty much simplified that process down to the T for us.
Brilliant. Thanks, Ed. Okay, Josh, this one's coming your way. Is there any benefit to having individual IDs on the AgriWebb software compared to the TSI software?
Yeah, great question. And you know what? I think there's probably a couple of ways we could look at that one. I think Mike Hemsley here is a great man to draw on in this particular answer as well. But Mike, do you want to add anything to that first?
Sure. Yeah. So TSI software. I mean, the TSI software. I guess at Gallagher, we concentrate on the weighing and EID side of things specifically. So we always have with our APS standard and our APS professional software that we've had, and more latterly the cloud software that we're working on. AgriWebb is a more holistic program where you've seen today, with the paddocks and moving animals from paddock to paddock, feed on offer, etc. So I think, depending on what you want to get out of a program, whether you want to be very specific around weighing an EID, or whether you want to use that more holistic program like AgriWebb, we have a product for you. What we're trying to do here is to make sure that our products work seamlessly with AgriWebb products, as well as providing software ourselves. So the TSI, coming back to the TSI, as I mentioned, has been very specific around weighing an EID and collecting data. And now I think we're all moving towards analysing and using more analytical tools with that data to get some really good results for you at the end. So yes, I think it's just basically whichever way that you feel you want to go with your data collection needs and what you want to get out of it eventually in respect to the kind of results that you want to get.
I think the word you mentioned there, Mike, that I pick up on is holistic. And Agriweb very much is that holistic level of management, whether you've got every animal on your phone, in your pocket, you've also got tasks, you've got full paddock history, you've got NLIS integrations, you've got a full breadth of farm management tools at your disposal. And I think that's one of the key differences. And among that, Agriweb, we specialize in building incredible software for farmers and livestock producers, and Gallagher happen to be incredibly good at building hardware. So there's a nice, complement in that work together.
All right, I can see there's a lot of questions here. We're probably not going to get through all of them, but rest assured we will answer all the questions and post to an FAQ post this session. So I'm sorry if we don't get to all your questions, but we will post the session. So next question, Ed, from Jake, does it support NLIS integration?
Yes, so it does, mainly for your specific transfer records, so your purchase records, sale records, and death records. So once you input those records into AgriWebb, it'll then automatically pull those specific AIDs that are linked to that record through the NLIS integration, and then you've got the option to then reconcile that against the database. So yes, short answer for that is you are able to integrate with the NLIS system.
Perfect, thank you, Ed. Okay, Josh, onto the financial side. So I showed a slide that talked about some of the dollar benefits. This is looking at the cost side and break even. So the question from Zach is, does AgriWebb have the functionality to do break even calculators on individual animals, plus capture costs involved with each animal for financial insights?
Yeah, great question, Zach. And yeah, absolutely. From a production standpoint, we can pull in all that information, whether it be a treatment on any given animal down to the per head level of application cost, whether it's transport costs when you're doing a sale or a purchase. All of those kind of end-to-end costs that you'd apply on any given AgriWebb record is captured and gives you the ability to then pull that information out in ultimately what is our reports that we also have around sales, purchases, deaths, and any record you apply, whether it's got a cost in it or not, can be pulled back out of AgriWebb for accounting purposes, end of month reporting purposes in things like a livestock reconciliation. And there's a variety of performance reports as well that we can use that information to visualize the whole farm performance over time as well. So the answer to that one is yes, and we're also continuing to improve that space and build on that space every week, month here at AgriWebb.
Thanks, Josh. Okay, Mike Hemsley, you're up for this one. Do I need to upgrade any of my hardware for the connection to work? And this is from James.
Hi, James. Depending on what you've got, if you've got any of the TW series, no, you don't. It's always best to have the latest version of that. We're often, as AgriWebb do, releasing new versions, pulling out bugs, adding features. So both our version 2s and version 1s can be found on our website. So as I say, as long as you've got the latest TW version, no problem. I mentioned the TSI earlier on in the presentation. The TSI is a little bit different because it is an older type product, and we use a Bluetooth dongle in the back of the TSI to send data directly to AgriWebb, and that the AgriWebb needs to be running on an Android operating system. It won't work on iOS, so that's the only drawback there. But no, as long as you've got a TW series, just get an up-to-date version. They're free, and away you go.
Good, thank you, Mike. Now, this is a very topical question in our recent product development. Ed, this is from Perina. Does AgriWebb adjust DSE as the weights go up?
As of extremely recently, and this point, yes, it will be able to do that. So I guess the way that it was initially set up with the mob system was just on an age class orientation, then you could manually update that for mobs, whereas now you do have the option to go in to put in as a weight option. You can specify what your age class DSEs are. So you've got a few options now to really dive into how you want to capture that information. But yeah, certainly down to a weight level, you are able to capture that information going forward.
Brilliant, thanks, Ed. Stephen asks, can you upload historical data from a CSV file to AgriWebb, and if so, how? Josh, would you like to take this one?
Great question, Stephen. So the short answer is you're taking that CSV file from your current system, uploading it directly to AgriWebb via our CSV import is really, really simple for the current state of your animals. You can obviously choose what date you want those to land on farm when you import it. And there's some really great flexibility around that importer to also add records that may have happened in the past, but as a general rule, would encourage when you're coming across to AgriWebb is really streamlining that and starting from day one. And if you've got those historic records, you want to keep them, certainly make note of keeping them and moving forward to AgriWebb.
Thank you, Josh, for that. Now, I have a question. I don't know who this one's from, but I'll ask the question. And I'm just running time here to see if I can find who it's from. It's anonymous. Okay, anonymous attendee. Let's call you Jake. No, we've done Jake. Let's call you Bob. Okay, Bob from Central New South Wales. Wondering if with individual animals, if you can have alerts on treatment that are due, or in dairy situation, for example, due for dry off. Josh, would you like to take that one?
Great question. I think in this particular case, what I would be using is tasks. So if you're aware of a particular treatment that's upcoming or an event that you want to plan for, using a task with that notification in the future that's going to come back and remind you, hey, we need to do this particular treatment. There's lots of use cases just like that tasks are really powerful for.
Okay, brilliant. All right, I'm just looking at some of the questions here, and I think Dave's already answered that one online. So I think we're pretty good with the questions. Dave, who's assisting us from the AgriWebb perspective here, to just give me the right questions to ask. Dave, are there any others that you think we should be highlighting that we can answer in the remaining couple of minutes here?
Yes, Mike, there's a couple more in the top of the Q&A that you'll be able to go through if you want.
Okay, cool. All right, so I'll start with this one. Okay, so I did the Stephen Hobbs one. So in the top of the Q&A, I've got one from Will, which is, can feedlot pricing grids be imported into AgriWebb for weight and definition, I think, to determine current and future values of individual stock? We currently use self-developed Excel calculator paired with Gallagher systems.
I think Ed, me and Mike can probably take that one. Great question, Will. And if you're looking at grid weights, we can absolutely set target weights for certain groups of animals that you are managing. And one of the concepts within AgriWebb is called an enterprise. And within that enterprise, you may have certain grid weights that you want to identify. And so we can look at those animals, slice and dice those animals, and set a target weight for those specific animals. Is there anything you would add to that Ed or Mike?
No, I think that's pretty well covered.
Yeah.
All right, brilliant. Okay, well, I think that's about all we have time for. I'll just conclude the session here, and we will get to the right screen. There we go. All right, fantastic. So thank you very much for attending this session. As I talked many times, the theme was how to boost productivity with the combination of AgriWebb and Gallagher Hardware. Now, final message, we are also offering 20% off any annual individual animal management plan until the 30th of September. So keep an eye out for the discount code in your inbox. And in that email, you will also receive a link to the recording of the webinar, so you can go back and review any of the content, any of the Q&A that we've had during this session. And as I mentioned, we'll curate those questions into an FAQ document, which we will share as well. So with that, thank you very much, everyone, for attending. I trust that this was valuable. Our intention was to really share with you that it's really never been more attainable for producers today to be able to focus on productivity, how to get the most out of your operation, and the combination of AgriWebb software and Gallagher hardware brings that to you and makes that ever accessible right now. So with that, I wish you a lovely rest of your Friday and a great weekend, and hope to talk to you all soon in this forum, or even better, in person at some point in the near future. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks.